The Rock Pile tonight presents, been a couple weeks, the No Huddle podcast. We'll have Coach DeCole on here in just a minute. Nick from CBUS. We'll have Coach Medicis on tonight. If you're listening on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, if you have any questions, comments you want to put on there for the coaches and I, we'll be more than happy to bring as many over as we can. So if you're listening tonight on YouTube, just make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you're listening for the first time on LinkedIn, again, you can put all your questions right in the comment box. So without further ado, I'm going to try a little something different here with the guys tonight. There they are. You guys like the beats?
What's going on, Coach?
Let me see if I can get the beats turned up. You guys like the beats?
I'm ready.
It suits you.
Intro music right there.
That's right, man. Well, you guys, welcome. I'm excited. I'm excited for a new buy or sell segment tonight. The best part is you guys have no clue what the buy and sell questions are, or the teams are. So I'm pumped up for that. We got some mid-season awards we're going to give out. We'll do some predictions at the end of the show. And then I want to start first, guys. I want to do just some opening statements first. For me, it's does Alabama have to win out? And did the seat get hotter for Medicis' Dino Babers, who Coach Medicis went off on Facebook and he said they should never lose to Wake Forest. They should have won the game. They might have, but they didn't. How about for Coach O and LSU? He still has a couple tough games ahead of him in the SEC, but the writing looks like he's not going to make it through the year. Coach DeCola, what do you got for the intro tonight?
You know, it's great that college football's back, back to that full swing, and the stadiums aren't half like we saw last year. I mean, you just saw a great weekend of some classic football games with the old Red River rivalry and that Penn State Iowa game, how it came down to the end and everything. And then you got the Texas A&M upset in Alabama. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this coming down throughout the weeks. And it's going to be at the end. And I think it's going to be a tough test to figure out who are the final four best teams there are.
Yeah, I agree. How about Nick from CBUS?
Yeah, I mean, rock falls in the air. Leaves are starting to turn, and college football is hitting its stride, right? So I think we're all in our happy place right now here, heading into football season. To echo what Jake said last week, fantastic weekend of college football, and really the whole season so far. I think we can all agree has been must see TV for the most part. But Rock, I'm with you. Some of these coaches on the hot seat. Oklahoma, great win, but again, we heard all offseason, new defense. We're ready to go. This is the year Oklahoma's defense turns it out, and right again now we're watching them give up points galore, and they played better in the second half. But some things change, but some things stay the same.
Medicis, what do you got?
No, I think it's good to see college football and not in a situation where it's Alabama and everybody else, or Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and everyone else, where this year you have the Iowas, you have the Penn States, you have the Cincinnatis who's knocking on the door, you have Oklahoma, you have a lot more teams, and you're not fighting for the fourth spot or the Notre Dame spot. You're actually fighting for, at this point, basically 2, 3, and 4, assuming Georgia only loses once. So I think the fact that we actually have some discussion and some arguments over who's in that top 4 is exciting for college football. It's not just, Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama anymore. Now we have some more teams coming in, and it's nice to see some new blood in there.
Yeah, and guys, I want to start with the A&M Bama game and just kind of recap. You guys mentioned, the Oklahoma, Texas, that Penn State game. So my wife and I were down at Niagara Falls for a birthday getaway for me. And here I am. I'm in between. I'm running to the bar to look at the TV, watch these games. And I want to start with the A&M Bama game first, because preseason, all we heard was how good this could be, the best Alabama defense that Nick Saban's had in years. I never would have thought Texas A&M, after their starting quarterback went down, week 1, that they would have any shot to beat Alabama. Now I'm on the wagon to say Alabama's got to win out, because if they lose one more, which they're probably going to play Georgia in the SEC title game, they're going to have to win out to get in. What do you guys think? Jake, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely think they're going to have to win out, or that Georgia game's got to be awfully close, and there's going to have to be other people that have more than one loss. But we've seen Alabama have a hiccup always in the middle of the season, and they usually come back strong. You got to give props to Texas A&M, how they came out, did some terrific things against the Alabama defense. I think they threw a lot of different looks at them that they haven't seen all year, and also, Alabama loses one of their nickel guy, I think it's 13, I forget his name, but he went out in the second play of the game for targeting,
Yep.
So that definitely hurts the team with that. But Fisher, believe he's the first coach to beat his Nick Saban. So you got to give him props for that one. But I think Alabama is still going to come back and they're going to start blowing teams out, and kind of maybe it pissed them off more. Maybe they went in kind of falling asleep. They didn't look like they were running on all cylinders and everything. They were having a little bit of an off night. So this could wake them up. And this is what Nick Saban wants, to wake them up.
Nick from C-Bus, what do you think?
Yeah, Rock, I had the defense circled too, right? I mean, I point back to the Florida game a couple weeks ago where Florida ran all over Alabama, and short of the first quarter in which Alabama's offense played phenomenal against Florida, they're in deep trouble against Florida, a couple weeks ago. So I felt like some of those warts that maybe Florida exposed and showed that Alabama wasn't necessarily the unbeatable team that maybe we're used to seeing season in and season out, I thought showed themselves again. They've had some injuries on defense, right? I mean, we all know war of attrition for all these college teams rear their ugly head as the season goes on. I'll be honest, even when Texas A&M was getting ready to kick the chip shot game-winning field goal, I was still anticipating Bama to block the field goal and for it to go to overtime and Alabama to find a way to win, because it feels like they've been on the ropes before in the SEC, year in, year out, and they find a way to win those games that most teams stub their toe. So I thought that was what was really interesting, was to see, that kind of preordained bias I have in my head, like they're not going to lose this. They'll find a way. It was refreshing to see them finally trip a little bit.
Medicius, how about you?
I think from watching Texas A&M early on, I think it was the Missouri game early on when the quarterback went out and they brought their backup in. I think he started the first half like 6 of 20 for 52 yards. To see how far they've come and to see a quarterback kind of grow up a little bit and see an offense, kind of change the way it's run, it is good to see. If there was ever a year to lose a game as a top seed, I mean, Nick's seeing it with Ohio State. They're right in the running. You would have thought 3 weeks ago they were done. Now Alabama's lost. Do you really trust Iowa up there? Cincinnati, a lot of teams are going to jump over them. So if there was ever a year to lose, this would be the year. And again, Alabama's good enough where they could run off every game the rest of the year and win the national title. And we'll just say, hey, that was the game that they got their wake-up call. But I thought the cool moment was the video of the kicker's family sitting there watching the kick, and the wife is a nervous wreck, and she is just constantly yelling stuff on the field. And then you see the kick go through, and she starts crying and rushes the field. That's what college football is about. Those are the good moments that you want to see. As much as an Alabama fan wants to see Alabama win, you love to see those upsets and watch, the fans rushing the field. I mean, they don't take the goalpost down and march around town like they used to, but just the atmosphere of college football, it's back. It feels normal again.
Who knows what that fine would be if they take the goalpost down? They already got fined $150,000 for storming the field. If they took the goalpost down, it might be $1 million.
You know what, guys? Alabama should have lost to Florida. That could have been 2 early losses for Alabama for the first time in a long time. You guys were talking about the Oklahoma-Texas game, and one thing I'll say this, Steve Sarkisian, that Texas team does look different than what it was under Nick, your old Ohio State guy, Tim Herman.
Yeah.
But, Sark had them ready to play. I think it's definitely a much better Texas team than what people think. I mean, they have the 2 losses, right, already? Or did they just have the 1? 2 losses, right? They got beat early in the year. Yeah. But for Lincoln Riley to bench a Heisman candidate quarterback and come in with a true freshman quarterback and come back, that's the Lincoln Riley offense I think we've been waiting to see this whole year. We haven't seen it. Now we got a quarterback controversy in Oklahoma. What do you think, C-Bus?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like Texas is definitely poised. They look better. They got work to do defensively, of course, but that's okay. I think, Sark definitely has those guys running an offense that that really looks like they can compete week in and week out. I'm going to forget the wide receiver's name out of Texas, but spurned Michigan to go to Texas and raised a lot of eyebrows when he did. And boy, he looks like he made the right decision in going to Sark's offense. I thought it was definitely an indictment on Rattler, just in relationship to how that offense has looked all year. And maybe we all the Denny Green crowned him a little bit before we should have, based on maybe that Oklahoma tradition that we've seen over the last 5-6 years at quarterback. It definitely looks like that freshman kid is going to be the pick to click here for the rest of the season. And I think you might see Oklahoma get a little bit of burst of life here, and might be a force to be reckoned with here as we come down the stretch.
So, Jay, keep your head coaching hat on here. If you're Lincoln Riley, do you go with the freshman, or do you still put it in the hands of your Heisman quarterback that really hasn't looked great so far this year? Do you write it off and say, you know what, he didn't play great, this is still his team? Or do you go with the true freshman right now?
Well, I think you got to get the sense of the locker room. The hard part is all of his recruits are going to be watching him. He goes into a house and he says, hey, I play the best players. And if he starts the Rattler guy again and keeps going with him, and everyone knows, hey, the kid's sitting behind him who's a better player, is that going to hurt his recruiting thing? Because now it's, okay, yes, it is. He started off the year with it as a starting quarterback, but this kid came on and improved it on a huge stage. And there was also talks during camp too, was everyone's like, hey, watch out for this kid. This kid's right behind him. If Rattler has a misstep, this kid's ready to go. So I think you got to go with the young kid. He's hot right now. You got to keep it moving. I think he's got people buying in, and he brings a different type of game to his style. Lincoln, the kid can run. So teams got to be ready for him to pass and run now. It's almost a different type of offense a little bit. And Rattler, he's been average this year. Yes, I know he was a Heisman Trophy, or possible finalist and everything, but that's going across the board, across all college football. You got the North Carolina quarterback struggling, Clemson quarterback struggling, and it might change a lot of times. Is good for a team, and they can rally behind him and everything.
Medicis, what about the transfer portal? So if you're Oklahoma with this transfer portal, you got to worry that if you go with one quarterback, maybe the other one finishes the season, enters into the transfer portal. As the coach, should he be worried about that?
I think if you're in a position like Oklahoma, you're in it for national titles. And if you lose a player, 2, 3, 4, but you win a national title, wouldn't you take that? And your job is to win. And if winning means you bench guys that had good reps coming in, had great seasons in prior years, but aren't producing, your job at the end of the day is to win. And part of coaching is teaching that, you can't let up. And there's guys that are always trying to take your position, take your job in life, and you got to push through. So as a coach, are you really setting a good message to your kids if you're not relaying that message? And to jump off of what the guy said before, I think we also have to make sure that we don't discount the plays that the wide receivers were making. Early on in the game, there were passes that were dropped. There were mistakes. I mean, the early turnovers and it was 21-0 in the first, I think, 6 minutes. And nobody got nervous. Nobody panicked. They played their game, and guys stepped up. And when you make a change like that, and you bring a freshman in, big time players have to step up and make big time plays. And that go ahead, I think it was the tying touchdown where he had to readjust in midair and caught the touchdown right in the corner of the end zone. They weren't making that catch in the first and second quarter. So let's not discount the fact that guys knew, hey, listen, our quarterback's out, our Heisman finalist, the favorite for the Heisman's out right now. Maybe I got to do a little bit more. Maybe I got to run this route a little hard. Maybe I got to make a play because there's a young kid out there that doesn't know how to read defenses, that doesn't know how to audible at the line, and I got to make up for that by making a play.
You guys, real fast, I just want to spend a minute on that Penn State-Iowa game, and Kirk Ferentz, I don't know, somehow finds a way to win another game as ugly as I think it was. Sean Clifford goes down for Penn State, but the defense still didn't show up that second half. Iowa really doesn't play anybody now until the Big Ten championship game. So does Iowa have an argument, or if they get all the way to the Big Ten title game and they lose that game, do they still have a shot to get in, C-Bus?
I've been asking myself that question, I think, this week.
I mean, I don't think anybody's going to beat them in the Big Ten West.
No, I mean, my only thought behind that is Iowa's deficiency is offense. I think we all agree. And so that tells me that if you give up, that defense gives up a couple fluky touchdowns early against a team, and you give somebody life like a Northwestern or somebody to that degree, and they feel like maybe that they can shock the world, or a Wisconsin, right? I think there's possibilities there. So much for Iowa is going to be the eye test. I think, if they made it to the Big Ten title game and they're playing an undefeated, Michigan team, or an undefeated Michigan State team, or a one-loss Penn State team, or Ohio State, and if they compete, some of that's just going to be dependent on who else is left standing, right? Are you going to put Iowa in over a one-loss, over a one-loss team out there in another Power 5 conference? I don't know. But you're right. The schedule really eases for them now. And like it or not, we're all going to know that watch that game. If Sean Clifford's healthy, the chances that Iowa wins that game are dramatically reduced, right? Like it or not, I hate to say injuries caused the whole thing, but if you watch that first half of the game to the second half of the game, yes, Penn State's defense took a nap, but if Clifford's healthy, I don't have any doubt that Penn State wins that game, probably by 2 or 3 scores.
Jake, how much does this fit into Kirk Ferentz? So just flying under the radar, I still don't think anybody's giving him any respect because, Nick, just like you're saying, Iowa really doesn't have the offense where could they score 40 points a game against that SEC team. But, Jake, how does this play into the style of play that Kirk Ferentz has at Iowa, where the schedule really fits them the rest of the way? Is this exactly the motivation that Kirk Ferentz can use with his team?
I mean, he could, but I also think, in my opinion, I think it could hurt him. Everyone sees he has a weak schedule. So if he's not blowing out teams with impressive wins, even scoring 35-0 or holding teams out, and they're just winning by 10, 14, I think the eye test is going to tell people a different story. I think they need to look good going up to that Big Ten championship game, because if they do lose, and they'll say they only lose by a field goal, it's okay, well, they were dominate the whole year, and then they ran into a Michigan, Ohio State team that's hot right now. But if they're just barely getting by, I could see another one-loss team somewhere that won their conference championship that gets in. Or who knows, it could be a whole nother thing of, 2 or 3 years ago, the Big Ten sent Ohio State in that wasn't in the championship game. Yeah. So it could very easily happen. I think it's nice that they have the easy schedule and they have something to look forward to, but I think they still need to come out and impress people.
Medicis, what do you think with Iowa?
Well, I think we're kind of penciling them into the Big Ten championship undefeated, and they still got to go to Wisconsin and Camp Randall, which, yeah, they're underachieving, but you're still going to Camp Randall. That's a tough place to play. And then you turn around and face a Northwestern team that everyone thought could be okay in the beginning of the year. But for whatever reason, Pat Fitzgerald always has his guys by the end of the year playing people tough. Even in his down years, they're playing people tough, and they tend to get one that they should not get every year. And I circle both of those games and say, all right, you know what? I feel like we've done this song and dance with Iowa about 8 years ago, 10 years ago, where Iowa starts out 5-0. They lose 2 or 3 games, and they go to a decent bowl as the 5th best team in the Big Ten. I feel like I've seen this story. Now Wisconsin's down this year, and that side of the Big Ten is obviously not as strong as the other side, but I don't think it's a done deal that they're going to go in undefeated to that Big Ten championship game.
And I'll say this to Rock to close that. I think Nebraska is more of a test for Iowa than Wisconsin is. I'm with you, Medicis. Normally I would tell you Wisconsin. Oh my goodness. But their offense is putrid. And you let Iowa's defense, to me, feast on them. But Nebraska, they got some weapons to score. If they're healthy there and they can limit Martinez from doing Martinez things in that game, they got a chance to give them a run.
And Nebraska is getting better. If you look at Nebraska week 1 to Nebraska playing against Michigan, that's a completely different team.
Yep.
They're clearly getting better. So that's the last game of the year. I mean, again, that's a game that wouldn't surprise me that, Iowa trips up against Nebraska.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Nick. I definitely think that could be a trap game at the end of the year. All right, guys, buy or sell. You guys buying right now. This might be an obvious one. Georgia's the best team in the country. Medici, let's start with you first.
Based on record, yes. On talent, I still don't know if they're the best team in the country. I still think Alabama is going to be playing for a national championship, but right now, Georgia is the best team because they're undefeated.
C-Bus, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm buying it. I'm a little more convicted than Medicis is on this one. Best defense, I think, in the country. I think the offense is slowly getting better, getting healthy, starting to show some explosion on that side of the ball. I think they look the most complete. Not to mean that they can't slip up and lose a game. I think we've all established that this season is prime for that. But I think they recruit well. They traditionally recruit well. The talent's there. The depth is there. They've shown me eye test wise best team I've seen so far.
Jake, how about you? You buying or selling it?
I'm buying it. Anytime you got a defense like that, they're going to keep you in the ball game. And they might not have the best offense, but that offense completes with that defense with them. Ball control, let their defense have a little bit break over there. I don't think they're going to get into too many high-scoring shootouts with that defense that they're going to have to rely on their offense. So I'm buying because, that's a stingy defense they got there.
Yeah, I'm buying it too. I mean, the defense everybody's talked about, but everybody keeps saying about the offense. I mean, they're still scoring 30 points a game. I mean, JT Daniels has looked pretty good in there as a quarterback, and I think he's only going to get better. But again, that front four for Georgia is like an NFL front. So I think I'm not going to pencil them in through the SEC unless they slip somewhere. But they're probably going to be undefeated playing a one-loss Alabama in the SEC title game. So I'm buying. I think right now they are the best team in the country. Guys, if you remember, I think the very first show I said at this point in time, the Big Ten was the best conference in football. And Medicis laughed and said, the what? 5 teams right now in the top 10. C-Bus, you buying it right now? Right now, not at the end of the year. Right now, they're the best conference.
I'm buying it wholeheartedly, Rock. I think they have the most talented, complete teams in a conference at the top end out of anybody else in the country. The SEC is very top heavy. We got Bama, we got Georgia. There's a significant drop off. I think as that we kind of get through there, you can argue Florida or A&M, but significant drop off there. Big 12 not in discussion. Pac-12 not in discussion. ACC with Clemson down. Not in the discussion. So yeah, I don't think it's really much of a debate, to be honest with you. It's a buy all day for me.
Medicis, I'm going to you because you laughed at me when I said this.
Yeah, I'm still going SEC. SEC's got 7 teams in the top 25. The Big Ten's very top heavy. I'm not saying they're not, and those 5 teams are very good, but the drop from 5 to 6 is pretty significant. And if you look at the SEC, I still think that's a conference that can get 2 teams into the playoff. Alabama's as good as anybody. Georgia's as good as anybody. And then you got a Kentucky team that's undefeated, kind of flying under the radar, who, if they had a better name right now, would be a top 6, top 7 team. I still think the Big Ten is right there. I think it's kind of 1A and 1B, but I think just based on the depth of not the top 5, because the top 5, the Big Ten is clearly better. But if you're saying which conference is better, I'll take 7 in the top 25. I'll go SEC.
Jake, how about you? You buying it?
Nope. I'm going with Nick. I'm going with the SEC, because just like if we were saying right now, who would you have? Alabama and Georgia or any of those Big Ten schools? You're picking those other guys. So right there tells us that that's the better conference. Then you got the Ole Miss. And like Nick said, Kentucky.
Old Miss. They don't play a lick of defense. What are you talking about? I'm a Lane Kiffin fan, but those dudes can't stop anybody.
Yeah, but they can score.
Oh,
Who can
what
score?
do you do? So can the Big
Hey,
12.
we're looking at Iowa
Big
going,
12
man,
with
who
all
do they
those
play?
offenses that can score.
We're
You may
looking
look
at
at all
Iowa
them.
going, who do they play?
Hey, Pete,
Northwestern, this
our
school
guy
going.
Pags Medici says you guys are SEC homers.
I know Pag knows what he's talking
And
about.
Bob Taylor says the best defense might belong to Cincinnati. I can't say I would say that's not a bad statement. Since he's got some dudes, that's for sure.
They do got some dudes.
We'll have to see how it plays out at the end of the year, but I'm still going by what I said. I'm still buying it right now. The Big Ten's the best conference
I'm with you, Rock.
in football, but we'll see. We'll see.
No respect.
That's a shocking take by you two. Shocking that you both would say the Big Ten.
I mean, who has Michigan played too? Have they played anyone?
We'll get into that in a minute. Don't get me going. I'm going to get into that at some point. Does Bama need to?
You had Oregon come in and beat one of the top.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure.
Where the SEC, they're beating up on each other. You know,
Joe Moorhead was in a hospital bed for that game they got beat. Just saying. Does Bama need to win out? I asked this in the beginning of the show. Jake, do they got to win out to get in? There's a one-loss Bama. If they beat Georgia, if Georgia gets there, are they in?
I think if they lost in the SEC championship with the last second field goal to Georgia, I could see them getting in. You know, I think it has to come. Some other teams have to lose here and there, but if they're blowing out teams and they get to the championship game and they lose on the last second field goal, I could see them putting them in. A, because of the revenue, and B, because you know they have the name Alabama and everyone travels and that's money. And they've also shown that they've gone into the playoffs before. And I know it's not the same team, but it's still Nick Saban. And they've won it before not being in the first overall seed.
My brother-in-law says beating Vanderbilt and the Citadel is a great feather in your cap.
Well, another Big Ten guy saying something in that SEC school. This is shocking.
Yep. C-Bus, what do you think? Bama got to win out?
No, I'm going to sell that, and I'm going to sell it. I'm going to sell it for similar to what Jake said, but you know, I think they have the cachet, right? That they're going to get the benefit of the doubt. I think if they make it to the SEC title game, I think all bets are off. I also say that because I don't know how many one-loss teams are going to be left, you know, at the end of the year, and a two-loss team, Bama team, might look appealing. And I think all you got to do is what did Alabama fall to the rankings from 1 to 5? They lost to an unranked A&M school, and they dropped 4 spots in the AP poll. I mean, you got to be kidding me. I think that's an absolute joke. You lose to an unranked team and you fall 4 spots from 1 to 5. But with that being said, I think that already tells you where the voters' mind are. They've worked up this equity as being the best football team in the country for the last decade or so consistently. And so I would say if any team's going to get in with 2 losses, it's Bama.
Medicis, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Nick said it perfectly. I mean, first off, I don't know that I think everyone's going to beat up on each other over the next couple of weeks. So I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama with 2 losses gets in. But again, you know, the precedent was set last year when you have a Texas A&M team that is probably better than Notre Dame and gets overlooked for that 4th spot. They want the money. They want the team that's going to bring in the revenue. And, you know, we know it's all about the money. And Alabama produces. And say what you want. You know, Nick just made a great point. I mean, a very good Oregon team goes to Ohio State and beats them with a freshman quarterback early in the season, and they drop to 8 or 9 in the rankings. Texas A&M, who barely put up double digits on Missouri, playing with a new quarterback, beats Alabama, and they drop to 5. It's like when Cincinnati starts the year at number 6. There's certain agendas that they're trying to push here. You know, if Cincinnati starts at 11, are they even in the discussion for the playoff? They might be too far away. So I think Alabama's always in the discussion, and you know, a 2-loss Alabama is probably good enough to get in the playoff.
I would say this. I think the only shot they got to get in is, let's say they have 2 losses, and we're going to assume it's Georgia out of the other SEC, and they beat Georgia. I think they're in. SEC champs with 2 losses. But then you get into the debate. What if there's a Ohio State, Nick, at 1 loss, wins the Big Ten title, and the argument is you put a 2-loss Bama SEC champ in over a 1-loss Big Ten Ohio State? I mean, there's a lot of debates, but I think they got to win out. I don't think they'll take a 2-loss Bama. And again, I'm just assuming Georgia gets there and Georgia beats them. But I think they got to win out to get in. My brother-in-law is all over it, Medicis. He says, sorry, the Maine Bears were booked this year for Syracuse.
That's because we played them last year. We're playing Albany this year. We're stepping in.
My brother-in-law is funny. All right, I even hate to say this one. Does the Big Ten still run through Columbus? C-Bus, you buying or selling it?
I'm going to buy it. Just because I think you're the king until somebody knocks you off your throne, right? So from that perspective, I'm gonna say until somebody beats Ohio State, it's still coming through Columbus. I will say that with an asterisk. I do not think this is Ohio State's year. I do think somebody else is going to represent the Big Ten in the Big Ten championship game from the East Division. And I think you might even see a different Big Ten team in the college football playoff. But as of right now, where I stand today, until Ohio State loses a conference game and they don't win the Big Ten, you got to come through a Columbus first.
Jake, what do you think? You buying it?
I'm buying it. Ohio State slipped up in the beginning of the year a little bit, had the couple losses, but they look pretty good now, especially with that quarterback getting more comfortable and those two receivers. They're going to put up some points. I think they scored the most in the Big Ten, and I know their defense is shaky at times, but with that offense putting up points,
best number one offense in the country, not just the Big Ten.
Okay.
Because
I'll give you that.
so you know,
I'll give you that. But when you got guys running free, wide open, and no one wants to cover them, that's how
maybe they're just better route runners.
But I think, like Nick said, it has to go. They're still the king. Someone still has to go in and beat them and knock them off. So I'm buying it.
Medicis, you buying it?
To be the man, you got to beat the man. Until somebody knocks off Ohio State, they're the team to beat. And just like to win a national title right now, everyone still talks about Alabama because they're king right now. So until that top dog gets knocked off and they're out of there, they're still in the discussion right now. Even though a team like Michigan, this could be the year they're playing much better. And, a year ago, we're trying to say, can we have a COVID pause to avoid them? Now, as a Michigan fan, we haven't really talked a lot about that Ohio State game because we're feeling a little more confident. But yeah, 100%, the Big Ten still runs through Columbus until someone beats them.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm gonna buy it. I hate to say that, C-Bus, but I agree. I think that offense the last 2 weeks, they're averaging over 50 points. And I always say the same thing. Ohio State just has guys running around the field wide open. But I think you got to tip your hat to Ryan Day, too, for the play calling and how to get his playmakers the ball. Defensively, if they can hold up defensively and continue to score and put points up the way they're doing, they're still going to be a tough out for anybody. Penn State, Michigan State. It's just too bad that the Big Ten East has 3 or 4 really good teams that over the next 3-4 weeks are going to beat each other up, because I think you could take 2 teams at the end of the year if they're undefeated or one-loss Big Ten teams. I think you have a pretty good argument at the end of the season.
Rock, the thing I'll add to that real quick, just because this is my boys, I thought you guys brought up a good point with Lincoln Riley, and do you play who's practicing the best versus who's been there before? And I thought this was Ryan Day's first big test as a head coach at Ohio State, and he's playing a lot of youngsters, a lot of freshmen on the D line and the secondary, and that is only going to pay dividends for them, I think, in the coming seasons. And I think it's a great message to the recruits. But it was something he had to adjust for. There was a lot of upperclassmen they felt were it was their time, they paid their dues, and they got their shot, and they didn't play well, and they quickly pivoted and has gone young, which is why I'm concerned. I think young teams like that have a chance to get burned as they're going through some of these growing pains. But they're young and they're coming, they're coming fast for sure.
C-Bus, who's your most improved team so far through the first part of the season?
I'm going to go Michigan State. I look at a team that was 2-6 or 2-4 last year. And 2-5, 2-6 last year. That was absolutely awful. And Mel Tucker found a way to galvanize that team to the transfer portal through recruiting to make that team really a formidable team. They run the ball well. They play good defense. They're not they're not going to knock off, the top SEC schools in the country, but they're a good football program. So to me, most improved from last year to this year so far midseason, it's Michigan State all day.
Jake, how about you?
I'm going to go with Penn State. Penn State looked impressive, and I think, what they came off last year, having a losing record with that season, and Franklin did a great job turning around. And, unfortunately, with the injury to the quarterback, they could have possibly very easily beat Iowa and been in the top 3. So I think that's a huge improvement there, that he got it back on track where he wanted.
Medeiros, how about you?
Well, I had 3 teams listed. The first was Michigan State. The second was Penn State. So I guess I got to go with my third choice here, which is Kentucky. Kentucky beat a Florida team that, was basically a missed extra point away from really, possibly beating Alabama and really controlling that game. So Kentucky was an under 500 team last year, and they're ranked near the top 10 right now, and in a good spot to make some noise in the SEC. Huge improvements right there. So I'm going to say Kentucky.
Yeah, I had Kentucky as one of my other teams with the wins over Florida and LSU. I got the state of Michigan. I got both Michigan State. I'll say this about Michigan State. Coming off their 2-5 campaign in the spring, they lost those games by an average of 26 points. Yeah. Now Mel Tucker's starting to get his own guys in there. He got a lot from the transfer portal. So tip your hat to him. But like I said, Michigan State, Penn State, these guys are going to play each other now over the next 3 to 4 weeks. So they're going to beat each other up, and it could be whatever team's the last man standing. And that East is going to be the one that I think is going to win the Big Ten. So we'll see what happens. Medeiros, biggest team you're disappointed in so far?
Oh man, have your pick here. I mean, there's a ton of them, but I'm going to go with Miami. Miami had high expectations coming out. Derek King was talking about how they're going to beat Alabama and they lose by 40. They struggled to beat Appalachian State the following week and then lose to Virginia. They just lost recently again. I'm trying to remember from my notes here who they lost to. Michigan State week 3, Virginia last week. So they've already lost 3 games. They came in with this huge, we're the U, we're back, we're going to beat Alabama. And it hasn't been pretty in Miami.
C-Bus, how about you?
I'm going to go LSU. You just can't recruit at the level in which LSU recruits at. Only a couple years removed from Joe Burrow being there and winning a national title to looking pedestrian at best, right? It's just an absolute mess down there. I think we all know Coach O's probably gone. He's threatening to put people in fishing holes that critique him on call-in shows. And, the writing's on the wall there, but under no circumstances should LSU, with the talent in which they bring in year in, year out, should look the way that they do on the field. So they're my biggest disappointment.
Jake, how about you?
Well, my first one was LSU. Obviously, just like Nick says, but my second one, I have to go with Clemson a little bit. I know it's probably a shock that people think I'm going to say it, but it's tough seeing Clemson, even with that turning the defense, giving up points. And then you had such a high hope for DJ, and he's struggling pretty bad. And they definitely need a wake-up call. I know they still have a shot going to the SEC championship, but they just don't look like the Clemson that everyone's used to seeing. I know we've been spoiled and everything, but I think they're going to have to change some things around. I think they're going to have to look into the transfer portal. I think they've lost 25 guys last year to the transfer portal, and they brought in none. And they just said, all right, we're going to go with freshmen, where I think now you're starting to see teams improve quickly just by the transfer portal. So I think they're going to have to get involved with that. And, he's going to have to, bite his tongue a little bit and bring them in the other guys that are good players so they can make a difference.
Yeah, I had 3 teams. You guys mentioned one of mine. I had LSU. They're facing back-to-back losing seasons. They're sitting at 3-3 right now, and they still have to play the big boys in the SEC. And you think about Nick's mention of recruiting. I mean, the resource that they have to recruit. I like Coach O, but there's no way Coach O survives this season. The other one I was going to say was North Carolina, preseason top 10 coming into the year, and I'm a huge Mac Brown guy. They returned Sam Howell this year, who's another Heisman guy. They just have not looked the part as everybody thought they were. And this is year 3 under Mac Brown. And the other team I had was, what about USC? They were picked to win the Pac-12. They were preseason number 15 in the country, and they fired their head coach midway through the year. But a lot of teams out there, guys, that it's been a big disappointment. And Manny Diaz, Nick, as you said, in Miami, huge disappointment. I know the University of Miami was really high on Manny Diaz. I don't think he survives this year either. We'll see how that plays out. You guys, I want to flip it. It's my favorite award in all of sports. I love the Heisman Trophy. It's by far my favorite. And there's a lot of good players out there. But I got to say, when I was doing some research on this, there's not really many guys that have really stood out so far this year through the season. For me, it's a couple guys. Right now, I think Matt Corral, the quarterback from Ole Miss, with Lane Kiffin's offense, 12 touchdowns, still hasn't turned it over, 8 rushing touchdowns. He didn't look great against Alabama. And then I'm going to go with the Michigan State running back, who's a former Wake Forest kid, Kenneth Walker, that's leading the nation and rushing at 912 yards and 9 touchdowns. C-Bus, who you got?
Well, I'm with you on there. I still think it's Bryce Young's to lose. I think Alabama, that's where the voters have started to tilt already going into the season. Even that loss to Bama, he threw for darn near 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think, and if Alabama is able to make it, to the SEC championship game and win, I think that's, that will add to the lore for him. The other kid I got as I was doing my research and reading a little bit was Bailey App from Western Kentucky.
Oh yeah.
This kid's numbers: 21 touchdowns, 3 TDs. They had one of the worst, I think, the 115th passing offense last year. Absolutely awful. He's averaging 417 yards a game, spraying it all over the yard. Would love to see him to get an invite to New York, and let them take a run.
I did see that. Yep.
Yeah. So that's
Jake. How about you? What do you got?
I'm going Bryce Young. I think it's his to lose. He's going to have a lot more games on TV and everything, and people are going to see him. And like Nick said, he had a great game, even though they lost. And it's very hard to pick because I think everything's very close. I'll be surprised if Medica says the Tucker guy from Syracuse. He's one of the highest rushers in the country, so he might pick him. So, but I think it's Young's to lose. But it's a wide open game.
Medica, who you got?
No, I agree with Jake. It's Bryce Young's to lose. However, Nick from CBUS, CJ Stroud's starting to come on, and like you said, he's got that offense. He's going to put up really big numbers. And, Bryce Young gets hurt or starts struggling, you always go with the quarterback on the top offense, and he's got to be in the discussion. I'm going to throw a name out that, people probably don't know and probably should know. Grayson McCall, quarterback at Coastal Carolina.
Yep.
14 touchdowns passed. He's rushed for 2 on an undefeated Chanticleer team.
We should play a drinking game on here that every time Medicis mentions that we should either do a shot or something. I knew that was
we won't make it through a half hour before we're all face down.
So my brother-in-law said as we were going through most improved, nobody mentioned Arkansas, who most improved. Yep. Pete Pagliaros had said North Carolina. And then Pete says UMass and Connecticut. Break it down for us. I didn't even see who won that game. UMass beat them? Oh, yeah. Poor UConn, man. Guys, the only other name I had written down, and I think I just wrote it down because I like him, Desmond Ritter's not having a great year. 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. But since he's all the way up to number 3 in the country right now, so usually when you look at this Heisman Trophy,
overrated.
I know I'm not saying he gets it, but at the end of the year, if they're undefeated and they're in the playoff, we'll see how he finishes. Not saying he's going to get it, but just he was my last one I had.
Good quarterback. Good call.
All right, guys, I want to get into some predictions for some games this week. First one I want to talk about is number 10 Michigan State at Indiana. Indiana's a 4.5-point underdog at Indiana. Jake, who you got?
Michigan State. I think Michigan State has got a little bit of confidence going, and I think Tucker does a great job there. And it should be a trap game for them looking ahead, but I haven't been impressed with Indiana at all. So I think Michigan State goes in there pretty easily.
C-Bus, who you got?
Yeah, I got Michigan State. I just think Indiana turns the ball over a little bit too much on offense. That defense will smother them throughout the 4 quarters, wear them down. Michigan State on the ground will also control that game as well. So I got Michigan State by 10 to 14.
Medicis, how about you?
Yeah, I got Michigan State by double digits.
I was just looking at the comments. Lisa, who I work with, says you guys need to do a fantasy football with college teams. That'd be a good idea. That'd be cool.
Fun.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Michigan State. I don't know what's happened to Indiana this year. Those big expectations, preseason top 25, they just haven't looked the same. But I go back to when we talked about some of these teams coming in, like in North Carolina, Iowa State, Indiana. They had all this preseason hype coming into the season. And here we got Iowa State's got a couple losses. Indiana's fell out of the top 25. Same with North Carolina. Maybe the hype's just too much. I like Michigan State. I think Indiana may keep it close at home against Michigan State, but we'll see.
But Rock, the other thing I think it's a good call out mentioning those teams, all teams that are not really familiar with expectations either, right? Those are all all teams that they're just not really used to, right? Somebody thinking they're going to be good. You talk about, okay, Ohio State has expectations or Miami has expectations. All right. They should be used to that in those programs. Definitely not when you're talking Indiana and North Carolina specifically.
All right, guys. The next one we got is Auburn at number 17, Arkansas. Arkansas is a 3.5-point favorite. Medicis, who you like?
I like Arkansas. I think they're playing well. They've lost to 2 very good teams in back-to-back weeks. So I'm going to go Arkansas here, and I think they cover.
C-Bus, who you got?
I'm going to go with Auburn on the upset. I like Arkansas. I like a lot of what they've done. I just think Auburn's that tough team, that annoying team to play, that finds a way to hang around. They make just enough plays to really be a pain. And then all of a sudden you look up and there's 8 minutes to go in the 4th quarter and you're in the middle of a dogfight. I think Auburn finds a way to squeak this one out. I think Arkansas, again, you're right. Medicis has played 2 good teams and lost. That's nothing to be down about. But I like this Auburn team for being pesky.
Jake, how about you? Who you got?
I'm going with, like C-Bus, I'm going Auburn. Auburn's always that tricky team. At one week they look fantastic, next week they look terrible. But I just like the way Auburn's, they're always a defensive type of team. And, if Nix could come out and throw the ball well, I like their chances.
Yeah, I like Auburn. I think Bo Nix has played better. You just don't know what you're going to get from Bo Nix. I feel like he's been there for like 20 years at Auburn. I love their head coach. I think he was the right hire for the job. I think Auburn's going to get better. And not taking anything away from Arkansas, as they've played 2 beasts. That game last week against Ole Miss was a shootout. But I think Auburn finds a way. It's only 3.5, but I think Auburn beats them by a touchdown or better this week. All right, guys. Has anybody talked about Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy just finds ways to win games in that Big 12 all the way up to number 12 at number 25, Texas. Texas is favored by 5.5 at home. Jake, who you got?
This is a tough one. It's how well is Texas going to respond after losing that type of game they had last week? That's always hard. A rival game like that, everyone's up, and now you got another team coming in. But the thing is, you always see with Oklahoma State is they always falter in the middle of the season. They always start off hot, 5-0, 6-0, and then they rack up 3 losses, 2 losses, and now they're out of it. So I'm going to go Texas. I think Starks gets them back on, and they come up with some new stuff, and I think Texas will get after them.
C-Bus, who you like?
I'm going to go Oklahoma State. Really opposite for what Jake said. I'm right with him. I just don't think Texas has the mojo to rebound that quickly after playing Oklahoma. Gut-wrenching loss after starting out so fast and so strong. They got beat up a little bit in that Oklahoma game too. A lot of defense. A lot of defensive players fell out there towards the end. Some maybe more serious injuries than other. I'm going to take Oklahoma State to cover and win.
Medicis, who you got?
I think what separates the good coaches in college football is when you lose a tough game, because inevitably you're going to lose games in college football. It's how do you respond and how do you bounce back? I mean, you're still dealing with 19 to 23-year-old guys. And at Texas, expectations are you can't lose 3 games in a year. So you lost to Oklahoma. How do you bounce back? I think Sarkisian gets into him a little bit this week, and I think Texas wins this game. And I think the Texas of the first half comes back and plays well and beats Oklahoma State.
I think Sark's going to have him ready to play. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to jump on Sark's bandwagon here because I think he was the right fit for that program. I think they're going to win a lot of games, down the road. I think they'll be playing in a lot of big games. I just think with the group he has this year, coming off of that loss last week, they should have won the football game. That would have been a huge win for Texas. And everybody was said, well, Texas is heading in the right direction. And now they have the big lead. They blow it. Nobody ever talks about Mike Gundy at all. And so far this season, if he can go into Texas and beat Texas, I think people got to take Gundy a little serious this year that he's got a pretty good team. Now, he does lose these late games in the season where they start off 8-0 and then they could lose 2 games. But I think Oklahoma State finds a way to go in to a young Texas team and beat Texas on the road. I think they cover the points too. I like Oklahoma State.
I always wonder, why is Texas favored, but Texas is higher in the poll? That always bugs me. Why put Oklahoma State at 12 where you don't think, oh, they can't beat Texas? We got to. That's just that.
Well, I think it's probably because they're at home. The way that people are saying, well, look how they played against Oklahoma. People are probably saying, well, Oklahoma, I think, is better than Oklahoma. But that was
the same with the Michigan problem too. Michigan, Wisconsin 2-2, and they're favored over a Michigan team that's ranked. And it's like, then why is Michigan ranked then? I know it's Vegas doing it, not the coaches.
Yep.
But that always just kind of
it's a good point.
A little bit.
So, you guys, how about we talked about this. This was a surprise team. Number 11, Kentucky at number 1, Georgia. Georgia's a 23-point favorite at home against Kentucky. Medicis, you're going to go with the upset? Any chance?
I'm picking Kentucky against the spread, but no upset. I think Georgia's a very good team, and we've said before, Georgia's got the best defense in the country. If the offense is clicking, I don't know that there's anyone that beats them. I think Kentucky's going to hang around. I think Kentucky's better than what people think. I think this is a close game into the fourth quarter, but I think that defense causes a turnover, and Georgia wins in a game a lot closer than people think.
C-Bus, how about you?
Yeah, I got Georgia. Although I think Kentucky can cover that spread. Georgia's not Florida, right? So I think Kentucky's going to hang with them. I think they're more physical than people give them credit for. I think they'll be able to smack Georgia around and really go punch for punch with them, probably in the first half, maybe in the midway through the third quarter. I think just too much Georgia over the course of 4 quarters, but I'm all on board on Kentucky. I love watching them play. I think they play a really exciting brand of football, fun story this year, but Georgia's too much.
Jake, how about you?
I'm going Georgia in a blowout. Kentucky's having a great year so far, but a lot of the Kentucky wins have been close. 6 points against South Carolina. Yes, they beat Florida, but they were close to Missouri, Chattanooga. They were close, so they're not blowing people out and everything. I think they've got the ball to roll away a couple times with them, playing a pretty good defense here and there, but Georgia's a whole different beast.
Yeah, I wonder if Mark Stoops will get his name brought up for the USC job, or if Ed Ogeron gets fired at LSU, does he make the jump to LSU, a bigger program? He has done a phenomenal job since he's been there at Kentucky. I know we talk about the basketball school, and I'm not jumping on their bandwagon yet to say they're a football school, because they're not. They'll never be the program there with Kentucky basketball, but Mark Stoops deserves all the credit. This is probably the biggest game at Kentucky in Kentucky history. If they can go into Georgia as a 23-point dog and hang around, and I think the big difference for me this year with them, last year's Kentucky team just ran the football. They put an athlete at quarterback and just said, we're going to run the football, stop us. And now they're throwing the ball. And when you look outside on the perimeter, you look at their skill players, they got some pretty good skilled guys that I think that'll run with a lot of these SEC. I don't think they get it done, but I think the game will be, whether it's 10 points, 11 points, I think they hang around for a bit. I'll go with Georgia, but I think they hang around for more than what people give them credit for. I love Mark Stoops. I think he's done a phenomenal job there. All right, Jake, I had to throw this one in for you and for Medicis because he went on a rant after Syracuse lost the Wake and said it was coaching. They should never lose to Wake Forest ever. Clemson at Syracuse. Syracuse is getting 14, Medicis. You buying them to beat them outright?
I think it's going to come down to the wire. I'm not sold. I mean, Jake said, DJ, it's a different year when you don't have all those weapons and people don't have film on you and you can just go in there and throw the ball and be successful. And I think now that defenses have tape, they're starting to play with Clemson and Syracuse has played a lot better defensively than they have in the past. And they have a workhorse. And if you can keep Clemson off the field and control the game a little bit, I think you have a shot, especially knowing in the back of your head that, hey, we've beaten Clemson before and we always play Clemson tough. So I'm going to take Syracuse on the spread, but I think Clemson wins the game. And then after the game, I probably post about how Dino deserves to be fired because he probably mismanaged the clock and took a timeout after a TV commercial or something. And, who else knows what he can do?
Well, Nick, our guy Pags from the radio show says, fire Dino.
I agree. Pags, we're on the same page right now.
C-Bus, who you got?
Well, I'm not getting burned by Syracuse again. I called into your radio show on Saturday morning. I was all excited to tell them they're going to beat Wake. And I'm watching the game going, I'm going to call back in next Saturday and tell you I know what I'm talking about. And then Babers did Babers things, and the rest was history, right? So, no, I'm gonna take Clemson. Too much. You said what? The spread's 14. Screw it. Take Clemson by 40.
Jake, how about you?
I'm going Clemson. The Carrier Dome has AC in it now. That's what happened last time. It was off, and Clemson cramped up. This time, the Carrier Dome has AC in it, so they don't have to worry about the heat. But also, Clemson's coming off a bye week, and I think that's going to help them regroup, get it going. Where Syracuse, trying to figure out things, and you got Dino shot out on the line and everything, and he knows he messed up that game, so he's going to have that question mark for his guys. Where Clemson's coming off a bye, nice and quiet, and I think they're going to put it on them.
I really was going to go with Syracuse in this, but then I went back and said Syracuse likes to run the football. And I still take that Clemson front four against the run. They're still going to be tough against that run offense of Syracuse. I'm going to go with Clemson, but I think this comes down again, Medicis. I think this comes down to a big play late in the fourth quarter, whether it's a turnover, a missed field goal. But I think Syracuse is going to cover the 2 touchdowns. And I'm not going to be surprised, and I hate to say this, that Syracuse beats them at home. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think there's a shot. But they're going to have to throw the ball to beat Clemson. They're not going to pound it on the ground and beat Clemson. That front's too good. So I'm going to go with Clemson, but Syracuse covers the spread.
But the one thing I will say is it's not just the Sean Tucker show anymore. Garrett Schrader's in. He's a mobile quarterback. He's averaged over 130 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns against Florida State and against Wake Forest. Again, Florida State not as good as Clemson, but Florida State has some athletes out there. Their defense is solid. And Wake Forest right now, I mean, you said it. Wake Forest is the team to beat in the ACC, and they had no business winning that game last week. So it's not the same old Syracuse. Are they better than Clemson? No. This game shouldn't be close, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, guys, I got to slip this in. Bucknell at Fordham. Fordham's 3-3, guys. They're undefeated in the Patriot League, picked second in the league. They're playing well. Jake, who you got?
Hang on, let me get my coin out and flip it and see where heads it's one, tails it's the other. What's Bucknell's record?
Bucknell's not very good this year.
Bucknell is 1-3.
All right, then we'll go Fordham then. There you go.
C-Bus, you riding with my Rams?
Of course. I only know one person that played for Fordham, and I'm looking at him. So let's go.
They got the leading tackler in the country.
Well, that could be manipulated.
Oh, they just give him a
multiple
half a
ways.
tackle every time he touches.
Oh,
the line.
I was gonna say, is that because they're on
Jesus.
defense all the time and their offense stinks and they get a chance to tackle 76 times a game?
Medicis, you riding with my Rams this week?
I apologize. They're 1-4, not 1-3. But yeah, you know what? When Fordham plays against tough schools like Bucknell and some of the Lafayette and Lehigh, I mean, these high-powered offenses that they have, I have to go with the Rams.
Holy Cross is picked to win the Patriot League for the second year in a row. Fordham's got the best offense in the Patriot League. So we'll see. Those two teams play, I think, next week, and I think they play them at Holy Cross. I'm going with Fordham. I like Fordham by a couple touchdowns against Bucknell. All right, guys, we got time to do our part shots. We're right at an hour, so let me get my screen here pulled up. Pag says he's going with Fordham. I like that, Pags. All right, let me see. Let me get you guys off screen and let me put Jake, we'll start with you, but I'm gonna cue my music up. I'm gonna cue the music. Let me see if I can get it going. Hold on.
Oh boy.
Let me see. There we go. What you got for us?
I don't have too much. I mean, my farm shot is about the player portal. You know, I understand it, how players get to make a decision. You know, they make a decision. They should have the right to go somewhere else. But you're starting to see players. Oh, they lost their starting job. They're entering the pool. Oh, they lost this. They're entering the pool. And there's so many great talent out there. It's almost, I think it's going to hurt college football in the end. You're going to see a lot of kids, you know, just go, oh, don't like it here. Hey, not starting, or hey, I'm not making enough money here with the name, likeness, and everything. So they're going to transfer here. And you're probably going to see a lot of Tate Martells out there that just transfer. So I wish they would get something in the rules for it and not just let everyone have one freebie. Maybe if that coach leaves or there's different protocols that they can follow. But, you know, you see teams that they can change a program real quick, which is nice. But also when you see all these big schools, even Alabama, Clemson, all that, and they have 20 players entering the transfer portal almost every single year. And I know they're not starters or the backups and they're looking for stuff, but that's kind of a little bit ridiculous out there. So I hope they get rules in place so it's not just the wild, wild west with it.
All right, let me go to let's go to C-Bus. What do you
Jake,
got, Nick?
we're going opposite ends of the spectrum because I'm going to tell you that the transfer portal is working. I feel like you're sitting on your lawn telling everybody to get off the lawn, and I'm going to tell you I got room for more. I think it's a great thing for college football, and I'm going to back that up with we've had 40 ranked teams lose this year so far in the first 6 weeks of college football. It's a record. And I think part of the reason that we're seeing that is solely based on these teams have the ability to retool and really reinvent themselves. We talked about Michigan State this year as an example, you know, a great way to go ahead, find some kids in the transfer portal, find a way to go retool their teams and make the parity that we've all been asking for in college football. We talk about and complain about Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, and everybody else. Well, now all of a sudden we have these kids that go to these big schools, and if for whatever reason another kid comes from behind that are better than them, or they have injuries, or a coach leaves, they're able to transfer, and now they're able to go make an impact at another school, and in turn, we're seeing that school become competitive. It does nothing but improve the competitiveness of the college landscape. We have schools like Cincinnati and Iowa that are dipping into the transfer portal. We have teams all over the place that we're super jazzed about. We spent an hour talking about all these up-and-coming teams that we're excited to see. I give a lot of credit to the transfer portal. I think the NCAA finally got out of their own way and allowed some parity to come back in the game. We expand the playoff with the transfer portal, and it's going to be all bets are off, and we might be talking, January Madness instead of March Madness if we get into that.
Well, speaking of March Madness, Medicis, I got you on, and you got to give me a shout. Mark Few suspended against Dixie State.
Yeah, we're probably gonna spend at least 45 minutes on the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch talking about that and talking about the impact that he's gonna lose not coaching against Dixie State. So I think that's real important. But my parting shot is about the playoff. We haven't got a chance to talk about it. I know we wanted to talk about the possibility of a 12-team playoff, but let's talk real quickly about the 4-team playoff. And if you're a guy like Cincinnati who plays outside of a power conference, think about this for a second. Who is the committee going to take? Are they going to take a one-loss Georgia team or Cincinnati? How about a one-loss Ohio State team, a one-loss Iowa team, a one-loss Michigan team, one-loss Penn State, one-loss Florida, Oklahoma, Oregon? How about a 2-loss Alabama team over Cincinnati? And then, sadly, an undefeated Coastal Carolina team that's never going to get a shot. But I just think about a 12-team playoff and think about some of these matchups. You would have a 4-5 matchup of Alabama and Ohio State with the winner playing Georgia. I just think the possibilities of these matchups and Seba said it great. Instead of March Madness, we have January Madness, and we're talking about upcoming matchups. How great it would be to see a team like Penn State take on Wake Forest or Clemson representing the ACC, where an ACC team can earn a little respect for their conference. They've been beaten up all year about how bad the ACC is. Well, you know what? If you upset the Big Ten, the supposed best conference in the country, in the playoffs, it earns you a little respect. So I would love to see a 12-team playoff. I hope it gets to that point. And I just think it'd be awesome. It would bring that March Madness feel to college football, which is so necessary.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome. And the next show we got to start with that playoff because I've had it on there for a couple shows and we haven't gotten to it. But I think it'd be fantastic. You watch that in January, and then we got March Madness a month and a half later, 2 months later. And I agree. I always say this, and I'm not biased because I played Division I AA, but they have that 16-team playoff that I think is one of the best playoffs in the country. You get those little schools that get a shot to play the big guys, and I hope the NCAA gets it right. And the next show we'll talk about it, guys. But Nick, that's a lot of good points, and that's a good argument. I'd love to be sitting on the committee when they go to pick the 4 teams because they got a lot of interest in debates to have. You guys, mine is actually pretty simple here, and my brother-in-law is not a big Nebraska guy, but our very first show when we were doing the coaches on the hot seat, Scott Frost is one of mine that was on the hot seat. And they're 3-4 this season. All 4 losses have come in the final minutes for Nebraska. They should have beat Oklahoma. They could have easily beat Michigan, in their last game. If they played Illinois again, they probably beat Illinois by 2 or 3 touchdowns. They played them the first game. They still have to play Ohio State. They still have to play Iowa, as we talked about earlier. They still have to play at Wisconsin, who is not a Wisconsin team, a preseason top 15 team. It's not the Wisconsin it's been the last couple of years. They got to beat Minnesota and Purdue. But you know what, guys? I think that Scott Frost, if he finishes it out by beating Minnesota and Purdue, and he can hang with Ohio State or he can hang with Iowa, beat Wisconsin, I think Scott Frost has bought himself another year. I think his team has not quit on him at all. I think they're playing much better than what they have the last couple of years. So I think Scott Frost is going to get another shot with Nebraska after this season, depending on how they finish. But I think he's earned it. They've looked pretty good. So, you guys, we'll have to start with the playoff talk the next show. So we'll definitely start with that. That's on me because we've had so much to get through with this one. So we'll start with that. But it's been another fun one. I think the next show we'll have Coach Kramer on. I think we'll have Coach P on with us. So we'll have probably a full crew. But I appreciate you guys coming on here tonight. It's been fun.
Thanks, Rock. Always fun.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. So that was the No Huddle podcast tonight, and some great topics. I love the buy or sell take. The predictions at the end, the pardon shots are always one of my favorite segments. And we'll get into the playoff talk. Coach Medici just brought up some good points. I'd love to be sitting on the committee at the end of the year to see how they go through that. But we'll talk more about that here. Probably in a couple of weeks, we'll get the crew back together. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You can hear some of the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch interviews, which I have a ton of them I got to put up there over the last couple of weeks. So I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. And as I always say on this show, the rock pile is where dreams become reality. Have a good evening.